Good morning, everyone. So we just heard from Dr. Ravi Gupta that brands can be, khuda or katil, or they can be zero or hero. And these are the people who make them into khuda and into heroes, right? And, a lot of it can be based on gut feel. All of us kind of believe we know our categories, we know our consumers, we know the fundamentals of brand building. But data is very important because, all of our friends here, all of you, you manage crores of marketing budgets, right? And you want to get it right. You want to make sure that in the short term, you're, utilizing that money well, smartly, and in the long term, you're building great brands. And I think there's nothing much to be said or more to be said on the value of building great brands. But as India moves from just kind of, made in India to, let's say, assembling phones for, iPhone, if you think about the value that is getting created, a lot of the value is in the brand, right? And if we, as we move up the value chain, it's very important for India to be building great brands as well. So just to give you an idea, like if you look at our economy today, it's $3.78 trillion. And, the latest brand Z from Kanta, which we'll be releasing, puts the value of the top 100 brands at about $450 billion. So you can see, and that's the intangible value, right? That doesn't include the value of the factories and plants and so on and so forth. So a lot of intangible value can be created in brands, but that requires the fuel for that is data and analytics. And that's what we're going to be talking with our esteemed panelists today. So just we can, keep it somewhat interactive and we can keep it a bit spicy. Please feel free to disagree with each other when you see, appropriate. So maybe I'll just start with the fundamentals, which is, what do you think are the key KPIs that you need to track on an ongoing basis and keep an eye on as you build great brands? And I think we have people here who manage first-party data, who have a lot of first-party data. So, for example, Sumit, you have obviously, data coming in from your portals. So Abhijit as well from Meesho. And Pranay, you are a mix of what I would call, you have a lot of first-party data, but, rely on third-party. And we have mass marketers as well from, Anandita in Yum and, Varun in Nestle. So how do you guys set KPIs and make sure that you're in the right track, short-term, long-term, and use data? So maybe we start with you, Sumit.
So, I think the KPIs would really depend. I mean, I've got a set of businesses, right? So the KPIs in businesses will depend upon the business, right? But I think the most fundamental thing is really to get the right data, because very often the quality of data, is needs to be sacrosanct. And most of us, if the data has noise, we end up obviously making all the wrong insights and conclusions and then base our strategies and decisions based on that. So while for a portal like Naukri, the KPIs would be registrations, applies. On the business side, we would be looking at how many searches are coming in, where are we getting views. At the same time, maybe in a business like Shiksha, we would be tracking how many responses are going, how many applications are going to institutes. So I would say KPIs, I think, would depend really on business, and they don't change very quickly. But according to me, I think what is important is, one, to track regularly, because when you consistently see something, can you actually see trends, right? And very important, I think, is to mine your data correctly, because if there's a lot of noise and there's a lot of outliers in the data, then they tend to kind of, give a very different story. It's like if we take out the averages of business schools, then the CTCs are very, very high on campus, right? Because there's that one person who's got that 1.5 crore job. So looking at the median then is very important. So I think those things are far more important. And KPIs will, of course, depend on the business. So I would just say data quality, consistently looking at data is important. And that's what we really look at.
Thanks. Anandita,
things. No, I completely agree with you, Sumit, because broadly the KPIs remain mostly the same. I mean, if it's a business, obviously at the end of it, it has to drive sales. For growing your brand, it has to drive your brand measures. Similarly, we keep tracking the consumer acquisition cost, consumer lifetime value. But to your point, I think it's so important for us not only to look at these basic matrices, but for example, for my business, which is in QSR, it also becomes very important for us to look at the overall funnel to see, how many consumers are actually coming onto our website, how many of them are actually coming onto the menu and finally checking out from the cart. So because sometimes it so happens that yes, you are reaching out, yes, you're targeting the consumers, but maybe the quality of consumers that you are getting are not the right consumers. So at the end of it, is the money being spent the right way? Maybe yes, maybe no. So therefore it becomes even more critical for our business to analyze the data, and other than the regular KPIs that I think all of us track, I'm just stating one example for us, becomes really, really critical, which helps us analyze whether the quality of data that we are getting is good enough or not.
Thanks.
Yeah, so see, it's the same again for Misho. Like the data points that we look at, the KPIs that we look at are pretty similar. And what happens in the consumer tech industry is that the verticals or the job to be done for brand marketing versus, let's say, acquisition is very defined. So while I'm of course looking at building top of mind awareness, the quality of awareness, but I also have to look at the business. What is it contributing to? Is organic installs increasing? Is the DAO increasing or not? I mean, I can go and say that, hey, my top of mind awareness has increased, but my business hasn't increased, then it's not seen as a
It's
success.
empty awareness.
Yes, yes. Right. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is, what is my objective? Like for example, like you said, 1P versus 3P. If I'm doing a brand campaign, my TAM is complete internet population of India, which is almost 750 million, which is huge. I'll go to everyone, right? And then I look at awareness again as the key metric, P0 metric. But if I'm doing a sale campaign, for example, where lot of it is return users, mostly users who shop on the app, but you're trying to get them again, then my key performance indicators are how many returned users are coming in, what is the retention percentage. So those keep varying according to the objective which is changing.
Thanks.
Yeah, so I'm in technology, and their data is always available for first party in most companies and brands. But one of the unique things is, because we are a startup, we don't have that much first party data to start with. So initially, a lot of it, and I'm one of those people who believes that if you do any campaign, it should be based on lookalike audiences or first party data being in your campaign. So that's where we've been struggling, as that initially we had some issues with this, and as a KPI, we have a rule that no campaign runs without a lookalike audience base in place. So that's one of the points we have. The second part is when you look at first party and third party data, right? First party data acquisition also comes with the point of responsibility of owning the data. So as an organization, because we also a London based organization, we do not want to acquire more first party data. But we are also in a unique part where people actually send us email addresses, etc., because they want to be part of our community. So somewhere putting it together, we have campaigns which run on lookalike audiences for now. But in the long term, we also want to work on CRM, which is kind of one of the parts, work on CLTV, where then acquiring them through subscriptions, so people who have bought our mobiles, have become more and more important. So that's where we're going into the next stage, which is now starting now in our third year of development.
Feels almost criminal to be in a mass marketing space where not a lot of feels almost criminal to be in a mass marketing space today, at least sitting with a lot of people who are having conversations here. But reality is, television is still not dead. Reality also is, it's evolving. The age of large brands looking at reinventing themselves and being relevant in today's day and age means that, of course, data-led decision making is critical. But data-led is not only first party or third party data. Data-led is when there is a need for whatever category I'm in. Am I being considered by consumers? That's data. Am I visible to consumers when they want to consider me? That's data. And at that moment, are they buying me? Is also data. Nielsen, Kantar, IMRB is also data. So, yeah, so in today's day and age, for large brands, what I would say is there is a lot more focus on efficiency of media. Is that working enough for us to be able to reinvest our rupee? Am I able to get a little more loyalty And loyalty today is measured a lot out of e-commerce, at least for mass marketing brands, because that's something that we will be able to retarget. But again, it comes at a cost because it comes with a little bit of a discount bill that comes in. So yeah, so data is relevant, but there are multiple ways to look at data.
Yeah, so that actually nicely segues into my next question, which is, I mean, it's obvious that it's horses for courses. What is your marketing objective? Also, considerations like quality and making sure it's always on. So it looks like, overall you're also drowning in data. Sometimes there's too much data. So from your own perspective, could you please kind of share, how do you make sure that you keep on track every day with always on data, but also you make sure that you're building the brand in the long term and creating brand value? So how do you balance the two? Maybe we start with Varun this time. Like, how do you balance the two? The need to be efficient every day, but making sure your North Star is kind of right.
See, I'll split it as two ends of the spectrum, okay? Brands that are starting out and very established brands. Brands that are starting out, I would say pretty much everyone is looking at real-time data, first-party data. What can we do? That's reality. So for them, they're drowning in data. I know that for a fact. We do a lot of early-stage brand building as well, and we know that sometimes it's too much. So there, for new age brands or brands that are starting out, there are two simple metrics we look at. Say, okay, the growth that we get, is it organic or inorganic? Multiple ways to measure it. That's the one way to look at it. The second thing that we do is, are we getting repeats out of our existing buyers? The same thing when we look at large brands, and I will take large brands as Maggi, Nescafe, KitKat. The second one is still relevant because that's where your consumption growth comes from. But the other information is, are we getting lost in terms of imagery parameters with respect to new age brands, startups, D2C brands? So the way we look at it, large scale marketers, is a lot of information, a lot of data helps build hypotheses, but ultimately hypothesis can and should be limited to a finite number. So any data that helps validate or invalidate your hypothesis, which is, are you being relevant on imagery and are your co-loyalists buying you or not? I would say that's where we track in terms of what we do. Otherwise, it's an ocean out there.
Yeah, so on our part, so what happens is, what we first look at is three parts of data. One is obviously the broad tracking you do, which is about pre-campaign, post-campaign, how do you go about it, what has been the impact of a campaign, that's what we look at. The second part is we look at broad industry dumps. So there's data also, for example, we'll get a Canalys data, a Kanta data when we can possibly afford it. Those kind of pieces of data we put together. And those data are more situational and they are about a one-time strategic insight into the category, and that's what we understand. But on a daily basis for us, tracking is important because being a startup, every penny matters. So today we have found new approaches like even Google search trending, trend volumes. These are things we are tracking because we're realizing the real value of awareness now is about people looking for you on the internet. So that's one possibility. So these are, or for example, we work with Flipkart, who's been a very great partner for us. So they will tell us what are our search volumes, our SOVs on their platform. So these are parameters we track on a daily basis. So much so that when it drops by a millisecond, we know that this is the campaign which caused it or this is the campaign which didn't cause it. And that's the, like you said, the new brand way of working.
So for us, what happens is that it's a huge data set that we have coming in every day, especially considering our DAO and MAU, which is greater than 100 million and which is a huge part of India which is coming in on the app every day. So it's important to keep tracking the key metrics, like how much is organic traffic coming in, is it breaking, not breaking. If it's breaking, then we do an RCA, of course, of why it's breaking. Sometimes what happens is that we get too much into a loop where we figure out at the end, hey, it's just seasonality probably which is affecting, right? And those are things which are unavoidable at the start, which you will only gain after you have 3-4 years of consistent data point and understand.
Nice. Pointing to what Sumit also shared.
Yes. But that's more of business indicators or I would say performance-led indicators. The other part of it is brand-led metrics. which we work very, very closely with Kantar, and we have a huge sample size data coming in every month. We analyze it religiously, and that gives us a very, very accurate picture of where we are as a brand in the consumer's mind. Like, if there is any competition activity, is it affecting our consumers' awareness, quality of awareness, imagery, all these things. That's the other part of it, which we track on a monthly basis. So the frequency changes from daily to monthly, and now to more strategic things. Like, we have a biannual planning cycle where we take a step back, we take a bird's eye view of only the very, very key indicators of business, and we see where is the next spurt of growth coming from. And that's how we sort of try to de-link tactical versus very, very strategic.
That's very useful. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, for example, for Pizza Hut, I think it's one of those large brands, but which also gets a lot of first-party data because, through our restaurants, through our apps, so we do have a large database. But I totally, in a way agree with Varun because it just becomes so difficult to navigate that data pool if we just go on a goose hunt and we don't know where we are looking for. I still believe it's very, very important to be closer to the consumer, be closer to the market as much as you can. And maybe my grounding of being in FMCG all my life has taught me that be as close as you can be to the consumer, know their pulse. That can help you come to some of the hypotheses that you have, you along with some data, then at least you know directionally where you are going. Then use data to really fine tune and come to a problem statement. And once you have the problem statement, then you know where to really look for, and therefore you go behind that data pool. Because otherwise, if you just, sit with the data pool that we play with every day, whether it's the syndicated data, like the Kantar, IMRB data, or our first party data, or even the data that we get from, say, for example, the sales level data, etc., I think it's just mind boggling. So I think that's how we really approach it. Use data the right way, but I still feel that there is no substitute of being close to the consumer, being close to your own, knowing the pulse of the business.
Now, that's a great point about human understanding, because there are numbers, and then there's the real consumer who you understand in it, in their entirety, and actually, arguably, it makes you make sense of data in a better way.
It's the why behind the what.
Yeah, it's the why behind the what. Yeah, there's a lot of what happening, and my question to you again, Sumit, is like you get a lot of data where the metrics are there. How do you kind of use this to come up with some of the bigger insights, the human insights?
So, I agree with nothing can replace knowing your customer, consumer, your market. And gut plays a very important role. So when you look at all that data, I think gut and intuition also kind of should not be something that you miss, because sometimes when you miss that, you feel, oh gosh, I was feeling this. Why didn't I, action on it? Because it does happen when data is giving you a story, you kind of get a little swayed and feel nahi, yahi yoga types. Well, I think for us also, what is important is we've got businesses at different maturity levels, right? So there's a Naukri, which is a very, very mature brand, has market leadership up to 85 to 87%. And therefore, you're looking at very, very different things, because you no longer really need to look at penetration, but you're really looking for emerging trends. It's in the white collar space. So we look at a lot of recruiter searches, etc., very, very carefully to really take those bets on and our job data, because we have a monthly job index which we've been publishing now for many years, and we look at that very carefully for macroeconomic trends. What's going to come out, what's going to happen. For example, in 2008, our BFSI jobs started coming down from July onwards, and we didn't know what's happening, but we were like, why is this sector going down? And then Lehman Brothers was announced in October or November. So I think for mature brands like that, you're looking at, while you look at your business metrics and your KPIs, but for the larger strategic pieces, you're really looking at where is this headed, what is coming out, when will IT start looking up, is there, is there going to be a hockey stick growth, or are we going down? And I think we look at a lot of searches and a lot of job data for those kind of trends. For a business like 99 acres, which is not only local but hyper local, right? It's very, very complicated, because not only do you have to look at a city, you need to look at sub localities, because real estate is like that. So I think it, and then there we've got brands like Job Hai, which is, a blue collar job site, 5 years old. So there you're looking at more penetration, and key metrics make more sense because you're really looking at penetration there, and you want more and more people to come on to you. But pretty much like Varun said, we are very conscious of both organic and inorganic, and very, very conscious of returning, because it's very easy, especially in the digital world, to spend money and get traffic. Traffic doesn't come very expensive. You can buy clicks for 2 rupees, 3 rupees. You can buy views for less than 1 rupee today. But if that is not really going to convert into anything, and if you're not getting returning traffic, then you're just fooling yourself. So I think we're also very conscious of looking at the organic pieces, looking at also for our brand spends. We want to see, while we do the brand tracks, etc., but quite honestly, we don't pay too much of heed to them, because all our businesses are internet. And if we feel that if we are very high on Toma, then why aren't they coming? What is Toma if they don't come, right? So while we do all the tracks, but honestly, we don't really
And
base a lot of stuff.
Naukri will always be Thomas, so you need to
so,
kind of go.
we don't really look at that, but we do look at what is happening to direct traffic. If we've done all this branding in the long term, is this base moving up? Say 9 months from here, 1 year from here, is this base moved up a little? Because then then you've done something which is successful. Because otherwise, when you put GRPs, when you put input and you're visible, obviously all these numbers go up. But what is the stay and what is the holding? Those are the kind of things that we look at.
Thanks. So one of the learnings for stock tips on, what's going up, going down, whether another Lehman Brothers is going to happen, you know where to go, right? So Naukri.com data there is the best absolute predictor on that. But on a more serious note, I think we spoke about this sort of balance of gut feel and AI. And that takes me to the next question, which is, machine learning has been around, and targeting, retargeting, media buying has been driven by that. But the latest wave of AI that is coming through, how are your organizations beginning to use that? Because one could even say that AI is supposed to have intuition now and develop its own intuition, which could, arguably replace gut feel in that sense. So maybe we start with you, to talk about how you're deploying latest cutting edge AI.
So I think in marketing, we've started using AI only in the last 2 years or so. While, as an organization, because we're all about algorithms and matching, we've been using AI now for a decade. But what we're doing is 2-3 folds. One, AI has enabled us to develop far more sophisticated algorithms. So every dollar that we deploy into, whether it is brand marketing or it is, performance, there is a profitability algorithm which is now developed. In the absence of AI, this was a quality algorithm. So a lot of things, I'll just give you a small example. So we thought we were doing a great job, because when you're doing digital acquisition or performance marketing, you're looking at scale, quality, CPA. We thought we were patting our backs that we're doing a great, efficient job. Till the data science guys actually developed the profitability algo, using AI. And we were minus 60. So we were actually losing 60 rupees for every 100 rupees being spent. But till that time, we thought we were doing a great job. Because we don't take revenue from the seekers. Everything is free, unlike e-com. So what it's shifted is, and today we are plus 40. So I think it has helped us to definitely make far better, sophisticated algorithms, which are now helping us,
Far more predictive.
far more predictive, far more accurate than predictive analytics, etc. that was there before. And you can assign and then we're working very closely with partners, because both the walled gardens today have a lot of AI, right? So you're working on Cappy, you're working on all the latest products that they have. Even at an alpha stage, we kind of use them. maybe a year before they even reach a beta stage. So we're doing a lot of experiments there, and those are the ways that we are kind of using AI in marketing.
In Yum, I think there are a lot of pilots which are happening globally, where because for us, consumer satisfaction is one of the key matrices that we look at, and therefore, whether it's the kind of product you serve them, how much you can personalize it, or even delivering it on time, and also the feedback that you get, how do you generate and give them real time. Have real time implications on the product or the service. So there's a lot of work happening at a global level, which is still to come to India. So we are waiting for that thing to cascade. But for example, if you look at how we are trying to do our small bits here, we are trying to incorporate some of these AI into marketing, more into campaigns, which is just trying to generate a lot of excitement and engagement among consumers. Like for example, last year we had a campaign which was about, we launched a range of pizzas, which was all about your mood, your pizza. The way we sort of activated it on ground was through a kiosk which was placed in our top stores, where you could go, the AI would actually scan your facial expressions, tell you what's your mood like today, and would recommend a pizza for you.
That's cool.
So it was, it was first time which was done by a pizza brand or a food brand, but for the consumers it created a lot of excitement. It gave us an opportunity to for us to talk about the product, but also it became very relevant for them in a very, very exciting way, which sort of worked quite well for us. So we are starting small, but trying more to integrate it in our regular marketing campaigns. But yeah, at a global level, there's a lot of work happening to, how do we get it more into day-to-day kind of predicting the consumer preference. I mean, I should be able to know if a consumer has come to me twice, what's going to be his order, or what is the occasion into day part, into the kind of offers that he or she might want, and be able to give him that during that point in time. So it's a very, very rich space. I would say we're only scratching the surface there.
Yeah, I mean, lot of our clients are beginning to mine moments. Yeah.
So for us, the way we look at AI is more for content generation right now. We haven't used a lot of AI for, I would say, analytics, because we have a very, very strong and a large analytics team right now, along with media partners specifically when we do campaigns. And the decision-making model that we look at right now is when we look at campaigns and when we see the results and when we compare pre and post, seems pretty accurate. Of course, there are a lot of trends which are coming in from an AI perspective, which is going to better that model, and analytics is going to a different stage altogether. But where we definitely use AI and how it works for us is that we are leaders in terms of social media. We are the most engaged brand actually in the country for almost a year running. And how we have figured out is that what is the sort of cost for content creation, and what is the TAT for content creation, which AI can help us in. Can AI help us create better content? Can AI help us create content which is true to consumer insights? All these things. So a large part of it goes right now in terms of social media for us.
Thanks.
Yeah, so I'm from a company where our CEO, Kalpe, actually drives the conversation on AI. So AI is like part of our everyday life. So machine learning for ages has been there in part of our product displays, our camera modules, algorithms, etc. Everything. And more we're using it daily in a lot of our decision making. It's only that now lately we've also started using a lot of NLP. So natural language processing is coming in. So from everything from job descriptions building to brief building to stuff like that, everything has to go through. Nowadays we have our own integrated chat GPT module in house. So we use that for everything. And in the long term for us, AI is part of our products, AI is part of things. So the inherent way the organization works is that every conversation also, there will be a discussion on whether this was kind of spoken to AI or we used AI in our daily decision making. So that's become part of our life. And in marketing also, more and more AI is being used. For example, in our last campaign, we tried to use AI to a certain extent. We worked with our media agency. Now we are using AI for our next campaign optimization, etc. So we are using AI daily for the simple reason that AI also helps us when we are a resource crunched organization. That's one of the reasons we do it.
Lean and mean.
Yeah, and it's more and more useful for us.
See, predictive and creative would be the large spaces where AI is now used a lot, right? But when it comes down to creative, I think it cuts a lot of time and gives a lot of efficiency on speed. Even 2 years back, there would be ideas for a key visual that will go to a creative agency. And there will be someone who will say, design it, give it back to us. that is gone today. Just as an idea, as a sketch, I don't think a sketch exists physically anymore. So we can just talk into a chat GPT or anything and you can get an output.
Yeah.
You use that as a conversation starter. So just the power of AI in creative iterations, I think, is yet to be fully unlocked. But for whatever little we've seen is amazing. For marketers, for agencies, it's a godsend. I would think for agencies, definitely so. But from how companies like us are using it, I'll go back to a little bit of predictive and go back to a little bit of shopper. Sales is, even for a large organization like Nestle, still bread and butter of what we do. So AI, we have a tool called Midas. Our CMD keeps speaking about it. For us to be able to understand what is the repeat orders for our distributor partners, what is the frequency with which you're able to get it. Link that to, let's say, a monsoon campaign for Nescafe. A Blue Tokai can do this, a Starbucks can do this. But for a large brand to be able to understand it and link it back to supply is amazing. So for consumer marketers, both sides of the spectrum is amazing. But I personally still think that the power of creative efficiency that we're getting today is mind-blowing.
Yeah, I mean, completely agree on that. And I mean, for us also, AI has been a godsend because, like you're creating using AI to create content, we are now using AI to also evaluate content. So what used to take 3 weeks, then, doing surveys, then reduced to, 3 days doing surveys, and is now 15 minutes using AI. So, you can like literally now feed in thousands of pieces of content to screen, to optimize, and you get real time. I mean, it's based on the algorithms are based on consumer feedback, but it fundamentally runs on AI. So it's really transforming all parts of the.
I just wanted to add to that. We've put all our tracks on, we've created a lot of Gen AI models on Llama internally and not using that much of GPT, but we're using a lot of the other creative tools in our creative team. But we put all our tracks on, and it's really nice because now whatever you want, you just kind of type it there, and in 10 seconds you get the answer, So I just wanted to add this to your point that yes, it's kind of really helping you analyze. We've also created a tool for our sales guys because you have so many products, item codes. Sales wants to know something. A sales guy in Bareilly wants to know something. They would call up somebody in customer support or something. We've created an internal tool on Llama 2. And now that and you've uploaded everything, your sales training and everything. And now it's like in the fraction of seconds, they can typing and they get an answer, Yeah. So I think there's so many uses of Gen AI as well.
And then if you look at large language models, hours of consumer focus groups, discussions, we load them on and, they're able to instantly at least give you a starting point to explore, right? The gist of it, and then you deep dive based on that. So yeah, it's fascinating, the possibilities that are coming up. Now, one of the things, and we spoke a bit about, walled gardens and I know different departments, first party data, third party data. So obviously there's a lot of data. It exists in silos. And I'd just like to hear from you, how are you kind of within your organizations, in a way, through collaboration, through culture, but also using technology. How do you get all this data together to inform brand building or whatever be the marketing action? How are you overcoming those challenges? Yeah, you want to start?
So till about 6-7 years ago, we also had data resting in silos. Marketing was looking at a set of databases. Product was looking at something else. And all of us, the data that we look at, we feel is the right data, until the review happens with the CEO and everybody's giving a different figure for the same thing, and then you're like, no, but my data table and my MIS is correct, and where have you picked it up? And then the reviews go tangentially into data. But I think what we did very successfully, and the credit of that goes to the technology departments, is we created a data lake. It started for Naukri we created it about 7 years ago. And I think that really, really helps, because when there's a data lake, now everybody else who's, whether you see, because every department will look at different data, and therefore all of us will need our own dashboards, etc. And there's so much data that you don't want everything in one place. You want stuff that you want to use daily, weekly, monthly. So I think now, because every Tableau report, every query, every whatever, I mean, whatever technologies are being used by different departments is actually going into the same source of data. So now data across the company is absolutely the same,
I mean,
because
like a
it's all
single
coming
source of truth.
single source of truth, because it's coming from the data lake. Now for all our businesses today, whether small or large, we have data lakes, and I think that has really solved the problem
That's
for
fascinating.
us.
Yeah, pretty much the same thing for us, because it also becomes easier to make those correlations and understand again, what is causing what. Because sometimes you're seeing at the brand data, you're looking at the sales and you're seeing it's down. But you might also want to know, is the service level good there? Are there any other issues? So even we've done the same. There's a data lake where everybody goes, and the BI tool sort of helps you analyze that, and you can see everything at one go. So it's just a matter of double click. When you look at something, you keep double clicking till the time you get to your answer. So I think there's no other way, because otherwise everybody will be looking at different data sets and will be analyzing things in a very, very different way.
So I completely agree on this, that when it's a large organization and data exists in silos, like there is growth data, there is brand data, there is category level data. And when you're working on a problem statement, ideally you should holistically look at all data points. I'll give you an example. What happened was, in one of the southern states, we had dipped quite a lot in terms of mind metrics, and it was an alarming dip. So, I mean, we looked at all the growth data, the funnel data, and we thought, hey, this is probably a consumer problem. We spoke to consumers also, and we understood that, hey, this is what the problem is coming out to be. And we thought, let's do a brand campaign. But then again, when you go into meetings with the leadership, with the CEO, and everyone comes and presents their data, you understand probably there is a miss which is somewhere else. You have to fix that first. Probably a category level problem, a business level problem, right? So to solve this, I think there are two things which we have done very, very well as an organization. One is we moved to a pod level structure. So everyone who's in a particular pod has a common objective. Like there is one folk from product, one from brand growth, one from category. And that becomes a common problem for them to solve, and everyone works collaboratively. That helps collaboration in a way. The second is putting all data together on one portal and publishing it weekly. It's also about how frequently are you looking at that data? Are you looking at the complete data in and out or not? So, I mean, even with data which comes externally, like Kantar data, we have sort of published it on our internal portal. So even a category folk can go and see, hey, this is where it's breaking, and he can come and talk to us. So combination of these things actually helps tackle such problems.
That's
Yes, if I can comment on some progression actually. So I've been in apparel in a Unilever kind of company, and now at nothing. So in an apparel, at that point in time, 10 years back, we used to put data in a source file. It used to take 8 people to analyze it. There would be an analysis agency working behind it, and then they would still predict brilliant stuff on what apparel can be bought, etc. To a Unilever where we put everything on a data lake. That BI had come in, Power BI came in, so we could create dashboards, etc. on the fly. They were far more powerful. To the extent now where we don't even need all of these, because the files could be put onto a chat GPT or an equivalent AI generator. And frankly, the analysis it pulls out sometimes is far better than 5-10 dashboards are built. So I think progression will be, I think the data lake will obviously be there, but we'll find a way to put data lakes we used to make fun of it, like ponds instead of being a single data lake. And still the AI will be powerful enough to look at all these ponds and give you an analysis and a single source of truth. So that will be the ultimate way to go.
Warren.
Pretty much everyone has access to the same data. Pretty much everyone has access to a lot of data. I think it boils down ultimately to saying, what do we do with the information that we get? And like they say, if the sales number of the last couple of days is not good, then there are 100 new hypotheses that come. And so 100,000 data points that come in. And if it happens for a quarter, and if that gets correlated with external data from people like you saying consumption and penetration is dropping, then God knows the amount of cloud space that is going to get used. um, I think there's a lot of clarity nowadays, the way we see information and also the frequency with which we see information. Unlike, let's say, a Meesho or a Pizza Hut who might want to look at data far more frequently on a daily, hourly basis, we don't look at changes in data unless it starts becoming a trend. It's great to be predictive, but you might also be, in the interest of being proactive, you might also be having a lot of knee-jerk reactions. So unless there is a trend, unless the trend starts becoming very evident, overreacting to it might be a problem. And so that is something that we're cognizant of. There's no lack of access to data. There's no lack of access to result-focused actions. But a little bit of caution is always advised.
Yeah, that's interesting. Having too much toys for a kid can create too much excitement. So, it's that, like that with data, that if you have too much data, you could end up, focusing on what's happening day to day and sometimes lose track of, like you said, what are the real underlying trends. So that's important. But I'd like to maybe sum up what we just heard, which is pretty enlightening. I think one of the things we heard was data democratization is incredibly important in an organization so that everybody has access to the same data, right? So that it doesn't get hoarded. The third thing we heard is how to organize data in a way where it can be accessed, whether it's through data lakes or ponds, where the ponds are linked together by AI, and then smart dashboards, which is a part of the democratization so that everybody knows. And I think there was a very good point raised on a single objective, where even if divisional or multifunctional teams are coming together, they're driving to a single objective and, hence looking at data in the right way for the right of, good of the brand or good of the organization. So that's good. Now I'll just switch tracks a bit and think about it. And that's perhaps our last question we have time for, which is looking at the consumer or the customer whose data is being used. How do you balance the need, and I know this has been a persistent question, how do you balance the need for personalization versus data security and privacy? So maybe we
So there are 2-3 things that I think are important to keep in mind. One, are you taking consent? And are you making opting out easy? We can hide it somewhere and say we have that opt out option, but it should be something that is visible. And I think it starts with that, because that is, I think, very, very important. The second thing is, one of the philosophies we followed is that just ask for data that is really required to serve the customer well, and don't get into building the richest profile when you don't need every aspect. Even a simple thing, like even when you're doing a survey, if you don't need the name and the age, then don't just ask it because you were taught in business school that the first 4 questions have to be this, right? So I think that a very important piece is, and that's something that we follow in all our businesses, even if it is Jeevan Sathi, we try not to personalize to the individual level. So can you build, crowdsourced stuff? And when I say crowd, it's wisdom of the
pretty
crowd,
sensitive information when it comes to
exactly.
Jeevan Sathi.
So can you kind of build a cohort of people like this, and then look at that behavior? So that way you somewhere anonymize data. So this is all happening on the platform. When we advertise, and if we are to do remarketing or lookalikes, we're very, very careful of, number one, who we are working with. I think, and have we got the right agreement signed, and what is the data that we are actually passing? Because what happens is, a lot of the very large sophisticated players are very sophisticated, and therefore they put pixels and cookies at different places. And though we feel that data is hashed and they're not reading everything, maybe they're actually looking at what the behavior is inside your site, which is what you don't want them to do. So I think it's also important that you exercise that caution as advertisers, where you make sure that with the product legal teams of the large publishers, and all of them have them, you sign your contracts and make sure that they've signed a contract that they're forgetting the cookie, they're forgetting the pixel outside their platform and not following the person 60 days down the line as to what the person is doing on your site. Those are some of the things that we follow.
No, it's very useful. Maybe we just jump to Abhijit because again, you have a lot of access to personal kind of buying information.
So I think what is very important first in this case is that what data am I taking, and am I explaining to the user why I'm taking this data? For example, why do I need your contacts? Let's say any app which is taking contacts. If there's a line explaining, hey, this is why I need your contacts, access to your contacts, it goes a long way again in building trust with the consumer, that very transparent objective wise, right? Second, again, like I completely agree with Sumit. I think we also have access to a lot of 1P data. And when we share it with advertisers, I think the biggest thing is who are you sharing it with? And are you following all the processes legality wise, and what data are you sharing? We do it at a very cohort level again. We do not personalize at an individual level and we go and look at everyone's data. We see broad trends which are arriving, and hence that helps us personalize again at a cohort level, which is beneficial for business also. Again, it gets too taxing if you go at a very individual level. So I would say these two things majorly which helps us.
Thank you. And I think we are at time. So I'll sum up and thank you to ELETS, because I think one of the things that made our conversation kind of rich and insightful is we had a very diverse set of panelists, people who, have a lot of own data, people who are mass marketers, building brands in long term, doing a lot of stuff on a daily basis. So I think it was a very good and wide-ranging discussion. Thank you. And I think a lot of provocations as well in terms of whether AI, I think we see it as an opportunity, but one of the topics we couldn't cover today was, will we be using it in a way which is wise and inclusive, right? And bringing, as they say, not just the India, but maybe the Bharat along, because a lot of these algorithms, they get shaped by where the data comes from. So fascinating future ahead, and thank you and all the best for creating Khudas. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.